welcome. Go down the rabbit hole with Stephanie Hernandez,
Jamie Nunez,
and Julio Coolio.
So the purpose of this podcast is to talk about all things conspiracy theories, but this first episode we're going to dedicate specifically to aliens. So I think the first thing we should talk about is the most current event, most official thing before we start getting into the theories. So let's talk about this congressional hearing that happened about a month ago, maybe a little bit more. So David Grush, former U.S. intelligence official, was the main person testifying at this hearing, and he went into a lot of detail. There's a lot of things to unpack here. So first, would you have anything to add for that?
What caught my eye when I was going through the hearing, and I didn't personally watch it, but I actually read a bunch of the articles, and one thing that caught my eye was from David Fravor, who was a former Navy commander. He said that him and a bunch of his military pilots at the time in 2004, they witnessed this tic-tac type of UFO, and it was reaching supersonic speeds. And it was basically defying the laws of physics. And I saw this video. I'm not sure if you guys have, but you can go ahead and check it out in the post when we post it on our social media. But man, when I say this thing is moving at a rate that defies the laws of physics, I mean, it really does. It's moving up and down, left and right. You don't really see any like any type of gas or it's just moving like
no noise too.
No noise. Yeah. That is what caught my attention and what caught my eye, because the way he was describing it is insane. And that's what caught my eye.
So I think I know the video you're talking about. If there's audio in it and you can actually hear the pilots in the plane, they're so astounded by what they're seeing. Like, they're just like, wow, like, did you guys see that? Like, they're just like, it's like pure excitement. There's no acting in it. I mean, why would a military official even, pretend?
Yeah,
but
risk his credentials, his validity, his credibility. To your point,
Exactly.
even their machine had or the technology that they had at the time in 2004, it had trouble locking in and locking onto this object that we're talking about. And that's the same video, that we're referring to.
It's crazy. And in that same hearing, David, that I had mentioned before, he was the main person testifying. He pretty much said a few things that kind of really worried me, especially in the beginning. I actually watched the hearing and I saw him say this in the intro, where he was saying, the U.S. government has downplayed the existence of aliens and said that they don't pose a risk or anything, trying to baby the population. He didn't say that word for word, but he was pretty much saying that. But he said that's the biggest understatement that I've ever heard. And he's an actual U.S., military official, and he's saying pretty much that aliens are posing a risk to the population in a way that it's almost like they're dangerous to us, but the government is trying to hide it, probably because of that. So the fact that this is all coming out now, it kind of feels like maybe they can't hide it anymore. Maybe something's going to happen. I know, my mom is a really big conspiracy theorist. Most of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is probably stuff that she's told me first. But I told her about the hearing. She's like, yeah, they have to say that aliens are real because they're coming. They're coming soon. The reptilian government and this and that. She thinks that, the time is ticking kind of, with the government. There's some sort of deal with the aliens or something. And, they have to say it now because something will happen soon. I don't know if that's true. But the fact that he said that they don't pose the government is saying they don't pose a risk, and he's like, that's the biggest understatement ever, is really scary, especially when you think about, he also said that they tried to reverse engineer some of these aircrafts that they've recovered. And he said that the scientists that were trying to reverse engineer it got hurt. Some of them got sick, and some of them almost died, or I think one may have died, which is crazy when you think about it.
When you're trying to mess around, the scariest stuff is the unknown, right? Anything we don't know is definitely the scariest. And when you try messing around with technology and craft, or even actual bodies, if you start messing around with that, Lord knows what you're going to expose yourself to, even if you're wearing protective gear. Mm-hmm. And I can't even imagine what type of effect it has on the mind, on the body, on the individual. and what kind of goal the government has in trying to reverse engineer these crafts into, what weapons or other crafts that they can manipulate it to. There's really no telling what the line is, because the government has crossed several lines, in my opinion, in the past, and especially today's world. But there's definitely consequences when you try to, like you said, reverse engineer and do all that.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past the U.S. government to actually have like a Men in Black organization trying to like pacify the population, basically. And I mean, they even showed this in Neon Genesis Evangelion, where the angels, the quote unquote angels, are actually just aliens.
Right.
And a lot of the time, like, they have to come up with like, I think they called it in the show specifically like a misinformation department, where like they actually have to like tell people, oh yeah, this wasn't like some giant alien that's coming for us. This was just like a solar flare or something.
Right.
And I would say I definitely believe the whole aliens thing, because my mom actually told me about an encounter she had before I was born with an alien, that she was at a mall in Hialeah and she saw a UFO flying.
What?
Wow.
And my mom has gone through like a lot of different health problems, like stomach cancer, different brain problems, and yet she's still alive. And she says, I think the aliens injected something in me.
Oh my
She's like, because there is no way I should be alive with everything that's happened to me.
She's
Oh
just
my
a girl
gosh.
boss.
Yeah, she's blessed by God for sure.
Yes.
But wow, that is
How do
that
we know
is-
God isn't an alien?
Right, that's a fair point.
I have this theory, and it's a long one, but pretty much that could be true. I mean, Jesus, I think, is like, there's a really big theory that Jesus could have been an alien. So there is this tribe in the Amazon that was completely untouched by man, and this is in the 1940s, I believe. There was a World War plane that was flying over Brazil, and then they saw it. They actually crashed, or they had gone down, and then the natives were so bewildered by like this technology and this man from the sky that they made a religion on him, and like looking at it from like a civilized perspective, or like it's just a man in an airplane, right? But people don't know, they don't understand things that they've never seen, and then they try to make sense of it by saying it's something supernatural, right? Even what we think is supernatural now might have a scientific explanation later. Who knows, right? But they tried to make sense of it, and they made a religion based off of this man that was just a pilot. So thinking about that and going back into what the Bible says about Jesus and some of the things that are said, it kind of correlates in a way with aliens. I don't know. Like, you know,
like how do you drink so much wine and not get a hangover?
Exactly.
No, that's a bit of a joke. Like, realistically, some of the stuff that Jesus did, like healing the sick,
Yeah, the
walking on
blind.
water.
Yeah, and then getting resurrected 3 days later, but he pretty much gets lifted up into the sky, which a lot of people that have been abducted say happens to them. They get lifted by this beam from this chariot in the sky. It's kind of the same thing. But pretty much that, and like the fact that Mary also gets beamed up, she gets impregnated, and she's a virgin, it kind of makes sense. A lot of people say that they get probed and stuff, and Jesus is the product of that, right? So kind of makes sense, but obviously we don't want to go too much into that. It's just a theory, right, guys?
One
Who
theory,
knows?
one theory that actually caught my eye, and I think they reference in the Bible, but it's basically about the Anunnaki, and it's basically like these like Sumerian. It was all right. Basically, in ancient Mesopotamia, there were these things that came down from Earth or from space, and essentially, long story short, it's about how we got so advanced and how like the human evolution took place so fast and so rapidly, because I'm sure you guys are familiar. Humans have evolved at a rapid rate, and a lot of people believe that there's a specific reason with that, and that reason is the Anunnaki, and they came down and they advanced humans essentially.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard of
agree.
that?
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that can't be explained, especially like natural structures. I think it's so crazy that the natural wonders of the world are literally on the equator at a certain like latitude and longitude, where they're
I didn't know
all
that.
kind of connected in a way. Yeah, it's actually crazy. It's like almost a linear thing, and nobody would know about that. While these wonders are being made, how would you know that they're connected that way until way later when we actually have the technology to be able to chart them on a globe and then be able to see that it makes a pattern?
Right.
There was no way. And the way these structures are even made, there's just a lot of discrepancies or mysteries that haven't been solved, and no one has an answer for it.
Yeah, there's a couple wonders of the world that people don't know how they got constructed. For example, there are some stones like in Machu Picchu in Peru where they're literally on, like these are these are tons, right? Like these are blocks that weigh tons, and they are like perfectly stacked on like a Tetris block, right? Like and it's insane how like they fit like a puzzle, but somehow they're cut finely sliced like with a laser.
Yeah.
And this is like thousands of years ago we're talking about. And even in ancient Egypt, and to what you were saying, how everything like is so like perfect and like planned. Precise. In Egypt, it's literally like perfectly aligned with like I believe it was a star. What was it? It was
a constellation.
It was like aligned perfectly with a constellation, and the way it was like perfectly the latitude and longitude, like where it was located, it was perfect. Like every stone placed on it was just perfect. And like, how the hell do the stones even get there? Like they're from a quarry like miles away.
Supposedly, people say, scientists and like anthropologists and a bunch of other people say that it was a man-made effort. Like I know, especially for the pyramids, they say that thousands of people weren't actually enslaved to build the pyramids, but that they actually volunteered. To put up the bricks on the pyramids.
But even then, like, is that
humanly possible?
So like, what, like, yeah, it's hard to fathom, right? Because like you could be very well right, but like, what do they like get like a 1,000 pieces of rope and like tie it up and then like everyone march and like push like tug of war, or like was it like
or a UFO carried it?
Yeah, or was it a contraption, right? And wouldn't that contraption still be in Egypt?
That's true.
Wouldn't these big like things that would help them out or whatever?
Where are they? Where are the structures that helped build this?
Yeah, like, you know, it's kind of,
that does make sense.
It's hard to believe. Me personally, I truly believe that they had the ability to have light in Egypt some way, like not with like you plug like, you know, the power into the outlet, but essentially I believe they had light somehow. They had electricity in Egypt, and they had light in ancient Egypt, and I believe they were able to levitate things. They were able to like lift things up with their hands, essentially, and that's how they were able to move these blocks that weigh tons of pounds.
And think about it as well. The Egyptians have a lot of gods that they believed in.
Yeah. I was about to say that.
Yeah, can't that just be like a stand-in for like aliens that had different abilities?
The fact that they have accurate drawings, not accurate, there's no way for us to tell if it's accurate. It's just very precise and detailed
like specific,
drawings of these creatures. It's like, yes, you could believe in a god and you can make up your own visual of it, but it's like over and over and over and over again, it's the same thing, and everyone perceives it as that. Like if it's a factually accurate thing, it makes you think how many people really saw it and they just accepted it as something. And then, you know, it just went on from there. And there's just a bunch of different, like you said, like different depictions of different gods. It could have just been, you know, and some of them look like what we perceive as UFOs. Some of them, you know, it's like a dog head, you know, that's probably not an alien. I don't know. Maybe they just made that one up. But there are like flying saucers in ancient Egypt, like scriptures. You see it. And
I remember one
weird.
time. So one time I went to Jamaica with my family, and we actually went up this mountain, and it was to the 9 Mile Village where like Bob Marley was born and where his grandparents were laid to rest. And we're doing a tour, and we make our way into, I believe it was the grandmother or the grandparents where they were laid to rest. And before you walk in, there's a giant mural, like a giant painting right above the walkway. And it's basically the first thing that catches your eye that you see before you walk into the room. And basically in the foreground, it was like a cliff, someone like looking out into the water. So you see like sand, you see like people, and you see things, and then as you look up, you make your way up into the painting, you start seeing seeing like a giant mothership. right? And like a giant
painting.
UFO in the painting. And mind you, this is like, you know, Bob Marley era, like his grandparents where they died, where they were laid to rest. So it's like you can kind of like gauge a time frame, like what, like maybe like the 50s or something like that, 40s or something. Or maybe even the 60s. But either way, this is a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
And I asked one of the people there, I'm like, hey, like, you know, what is that right there? Because I was like, I wanted to know. I wanted to know his answer. I knew what it was, right? Well,
But you wanted to see what someone there would say.
yeah, with someone else other than me. Because I showed my parents and they were like, oh, okay, whatever. And I was like, man.
No, you need a real
Yeah,
answer.
and I was like, hey, it was like one of the tour guides. I was like, hey, so what's that thing right there? And I pointed to it, obviously without touching it. I was like, hey, what's that right there? And he was like, oh, that? Yeah, that's the mothership. And I was like,
that
the mothership.
simply.
I was like, okay. Yeah, like exactly. Like zero hesitation. Like he just told me flat out, oh yeah, that's the mothership. And then just went about his day. I was like, wow, my mind was just blown. It was a lot to absorb at the time. I was like, man. And this is before like the government like, you know, officially like, you know,
said that
like
aliens were
all
a
this
possibility and all
exactly.
that.
Yeah, but yeah, that's my personal interaction. I've had my one other quick story. A coworker of mine who were a few years back, he told me that him and his girlfriend at the time, they were chilling, you know, they were hanging out at the beach. Yeah, it's around nighttime, and it was like they were just laying on the sand, right? Like they had a towel and just laying on the sand, and they see something emerge from the water, and it's like light, and it's like bright lights, and then like it's gone.
Yeah,
And it was
a
like,
lot.
what? I was like, what do you mean? He was like, dude, I was not under the influence or anything like that. Like, I was perfectly, like, you know, straight, like, level-headed, and I saw that. And I was like, what? I was like, you're not messing with me? He's like, dude, I'm telling you. I was like, what?
No, I 100% believe it because a lot of people say that UFOs actually will emerge from the water because they get some energy from the water. This is something my
Wow.
mom has told me too. But it does make a lot of sense. A lot of people say that they see UFOs above water. That's why a lot of them are off the coast of a lot of places and stuff like that. People say they get their energy from water or
Wow.
like some sort of resource that they need water from. And I don't know if you knew that before you told me that story.
No, I did not know that, but it
that
makes a lot of
correlates with
sense.
hundreds of sightings. Like, you didn't even know that. And, like, you telling me that, I'm like, it has to be real because everybody sees
Yeah.
UFOs over water.
It's, like, so crazy it makes sense. Like, it's
Yeah.
true.
Plus, the ocean is mostly undiscovered, so it's like,
that too.
what is under there?
Literally. Yeah, like, and, you know, it's crazy because we know more about space, right, than we do even our own ocean. So, like, we're over
Yeah.
here trying to, like certainly label with, like, a stamp, like, yeah, this is that, like, this is law. And it's like, how do we know? Like, there's really no way of actually knowing if we don't even know what is even in our own oceans and our home and our planet Earth, right?
Yeah, I think the government covered up aliens for the most part because of the fear that, like, we're not going to be right, that certain things will turn out to be wrong just about our existence. And, like, for example, with the whole thing about the sun revolving around the earth when we know it's actually the other way around, which people were put to death for that and everything.
Okay, so back to something a little bit more concrete, a little bit more evidential, right? So usually people go back to famous UFO stories kind of to prove their point, something that just can't be explained, something that has a lot of holes in it. And there's this one story that literally encompasses like everything we've talked about: cover-ups, Men in Black, you know, things that we don't understand that could get us sick, like all that stuff. And
Okay.
it all happened at once with this one case. It's a really famous case, and I heard it on the Joe Rogan podcast. And it was, I mean, I believed it. I don't even like him like that. That's the only one I've ever seen, but
You were
I was sold. I was tuned in. Like, I watched the whole thing. So it's called the Roswell of Brazil, right? So it's pretty much this famous UFO story. There were these three sisters. They were walking along this path, and they started to smell something very, very off. It was very, like, foul smell. Like, it was, like, meters that you could smell it from.
I've heard this before.
You've heard it?
Yes.
So these girls show up, and they see, like, this creature kind of, like lying on a wall, like, against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked frail. It looked like it was dying. And these girls were just in shock. Two of them ran away. They ran away screaming. One of them was frozen, locked in with this alien. Like, they were making, like, direct eye contact. And she said that the feeling she got from the alien was, I wasn't scared of it. It needed my help. Like, it was actually asking for help. So
They like communicated with her like
like
telepathically,
through
probably.
like through the feeling of like them looking at each other and just the way that it was, she said it needed my help. She was still obviously scared though, but she kind of just froze there. The other sister came back and dragged her away. When I tell you, like, the next things that happened, it just exploded from there. The military got involved. The Brazilian military at first, then the U.S. military got involved. So they're trying to say that this was a deformed man that was, hurt by something. Why would the U.S. government come to Brazil and pick up the body? That makes no sense. So they took this body that just stank. Like, I'm telling you, like, they said the stench would not leave for, like, weeks. And it would go into your nose and, like, you couldn't breathe anything else. Like, people were literally washing out their, like, nostrils trying to get this smell out. No human would do that. Like, that's like an incomprehensible smell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they take this thing in the back of a Brazilian SWAT, like, team, takes this thing to the hospital. They call the hospital ahead of time. They're like, clear out the floor. Why would they do that? Again, it makes no sense. So they take it to the hospital, and they get one doctor in charge of this case. Everyone else, like, it's a need-to-know basis. Everyone else just is, shunned out. So they're like, we need you to take x-rays of this thing. They have it, like, bound to, like it's completely concealed. Like, no one would know about it. This man that drove the alien to the hospital, he died, coincidentally, which is very, very suspicious.
Sus.
And so they get to the hospital. They tell the doctor, you need to take x-rays of this thing. He's like, what is it? They're like, just take x-rays of it. Don't ask any questions. He starts taking the x-rays, and then as soon as the x-rays are developed, he doesn't even get to see them. They snatch it from him. Like, they're like, you can't even see the results. They take these x-rays, they take it away, like, the results. The doctor's like, what just happened? They give an explanation to the people in the hospital just to calm them down, I guess. And they're like, oh no, like, the explanation was the most funniest thing. They said it was a midget having a baby. And that's why the SWAT team was there. And that's why the whole place needed to be evacuated. Which is like, I don't even know if they were just panicking because of, like, the whole situation going on, but that's what they could come up with, which is ridiculous. So they take this body, and then the U.S. government shows up, takes this body from, it's already dead, by the way. They take it from Brazil to the United States. No one else knows anything else that happened. Everyone in Brazil is just left like, what just happened? The sisters, they have no explanation. Nobody does. And then pretty much the Men in Black showed up, and they offered them cash to not talk about it. The sisters. And at one point, the story just got out because so many people were involved. The stench wouldn't leave the hospital. Like, everywhere that this alien was, like, it was just infected by it. Like, everyone just knew something was going on. And there's really no way to explain that. But it kind of encompasses, like, everything. It's just, like, I don't know. There's no way to explain it. And I don't know. It just... It's
It
like,
leaves you speechless.
It leaves you speechless, yeah. When I heard that, I was like, more people should know about this. There's a movie and there's like a book, I think, that someone had done when they got all of the information from everybody. This is the guy that was on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, I think I saw that movie. I forget what it's called.
The Point of Contact or something like that. Yeah.
It's like a bunch of perspectives on like
what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, super cool. I gotta watch it. But like, that's just like, to me, the most kind of like unrefutable like UFO case, because it just has so many witnesses. It has a lot of unexplained things why the U.S. government would show up to Brazil to recover this body if it wasn't anything special. I don't know. There's just no explanation
more than
for it.
Project Bluebeam.
Oh, Project Bluebeam is something else.
I mean, the U.S. government is known for covering up a lot of stuff, and we're not just talking about aliens. We're also talking about like on Earth as well.
Yeah, like political
like,
stuff.
We could definitely make a whole episode just about the U.S. government.
Oh yeah, and
but
we will.
The whole thing. But I think it really had to have been an alien for them to get involved.
Exactly.
And as I mentioned earlier, like them sort of like trying to do some damage control, basically.
Yeah.
In terms of like information out there and stuff.
Giving out money.
And giving out money.
Yeah.
And then someone mysteriously dying too that was involved in it. it doesn't make sense. I think actually the money wasn't offered to. I don't think the money was offered to the 3 girls. I think the money was offered to the wife of the guy that died. If you, yeah, maybe we can go back and edit this. I think that's actually who was offered the money, which makes that like 10 times weirder actually to me.
For sure.
Because someone would be upset if someone had died as a result of this situation. They'd probably want to tell everybody about it. They have nothing else to lose. So that just makes it weirder too. But onto Project
I mean, who
Bluebeam.
knows? They might just say it's money, but they might have like offered them like more stuff. Like, hey, we'll pay off like, I don't know, your entire mortgage or something.
Yeah.
As long as you don't talk about it. And then by that point, like, you wouldn't want to risk your security.
Exactly. I don't think she took it. I think she was just like, nothing can bring my husband back kind of thing. And I mean, they just make people like that sound crazy. That's like their main point of deflection is like, these people are lunatics.
Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss.
Exactly.
It's funny because we actually haven't had a female president.
We haven't. Almost, but not really. So, Project Bluebeam, as we close everything off, is the most like outrageous theory. Do you know about this?
No, I haven't heard anything about it. The closest thing I've heard to like blue beams is all these blue lights that they're putting into street lights now. That apparently they cause like brain damage and stuff.
What? What is that? Why would they have a blue light in the street light?
But that's not alien related though.
No. Is
Yeah,
this
no.
government related? Can we talk about this in the next one?
Probably.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
we
think
will.
it could be government related for sure.
Well, the blue beam is something else that is currently catching wind on like TikTok and Facebook for like those weird boomers that get all those conspiracy theories on their
The WhatsApp people.
the WhatsApp people. Yeah, that's my mom. So she like got a hold of this theory and she has been just telling everybody about it. So do you remember this Mexican congressional hearing where this guy brought out the aliens?
Yeah, and then apparently they said it was just like some llama brains put into like some clay or something like that.
Honestly, I don't think those were real alien bodies because that guy, Jaime, he is actually one of the people that's promoting Project Bluebeam that my mom heard about. I like crossed those two bridges together and I realized I'm like, yeah, that means that everything that happened in Mexico is false. Just because I know that this Project Bluebeam thing is just insane. So pretty much what it is that the government is releasing all these stories about aliens to get people to get afraid.
Like fear mongering.
It's
Yeah.
for fear mongering. Pretty much the goal of Project Bluebeam is to turn everything into a new world order. So everyone gets scared, and then this is China thing. This is like a China thing. So China has been allegedly creating this technology where it's a mist that you put in the atmosphere. When you do that, the sky becomes reflective. So whatever you project onto it will come back and it'll look like whatever you're trying to project is in the sky. So the theory is that China is going to plan a fake alien invasion or a fake second coming of Jesus. It's one of the two. So to scare everybody into believing or obeying one singular government. So that big catastrophic event that's not even real, it's just a projection in the sky from China, is to get everyone to join one singular world government that will rule everybody.
Right. That kind of already happened in a sense with COVID, right? Like it was like a nation, like not even national, it was like global wide, like shutdown essentially. Like you could only get X amount of things from the store. You could only like you can't leave your house. You know what I mean? Like or you had to be vaccinated to go XYZ or to do XYZ. So I feel like to some extent that's already happened, if not already, being incorporated.
We could do a whole video on COVID, like a whole podcast on COVID. I think that'd be really cool. There's a lot of theories about that.
Yeah, I'm willing to believe the blue beam theory now, just because we know part of human nature is that we are willing to sacrifice freedom for security. And then if they're like, oh, join us and then we'll be safe, like that probably is going to happen.
Yeah. So hopefully we don't watch this back when we're all under one government and we're like, oh my God, we were right. But
And think
hopefully
about it
that
as
doesn't
well.
happen.
overpopulation. There's like 8 billion people in the world
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, that's a
And then
factor.
there are
too.
people who have like cults where it's like they dedicate themselves to killing themselves because they believe that aliens are going to take them to a higher place.
Exactly.
Oh
So,
yeah.
if you
Heaven's Gate.
induce a mass suicide, like you could
That would
easily
solve a
lower
lot
the
of problems.
You were overpopulation.
Thanos. He's like my favorite.
I have a whole theory about how Thanos is basically a prediction of the 2020 state of the United States.
We
But
can definitely talk about that later. I like that.
And
We'll keep
I've-
that for the COVID one.
yeah, I've been wanting to talk about it for a long time, but my mom's like, they're probably gonna arrest you.
Oh no, I want to hear this. Thanos is like my favorite villain of all time. I love him. He was right. Okay, so I think we should wrap this up here. So thank you for going down the rabbit hole with Stephanie Hernandez.
Jamie Nunez.
And Julio Coolio.
Until next time.